Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. This is The Writing Life. And, you know, I was thinking I start basically every show by saying my guest is so-and-so, and I'm so pleased to have him. Today could have started a little different because the word that came to my mind was trepidation when I went on your website. But now I really am so pleased to have Mike Wellins with us. And Mike, let's get my trepidation out of the way.
Yes, what was that? That's really
that was, and I don't know how to say this, peculiarium?
Yes,
Okay, just for a second.
Sure, that's
what in the world is that?
It is a crazy avant-garde art gallery and shop in Northwest Portland on Thurman Street, and that is my day job.
Okay.
Yes.
So, again, just a little history. Did you start that? Did you buy it?
Started it. I started it with a bunch of artists, yes.
Okay.
And my girlfriend and I run it now, and there's probably about 40 artists involved.
Okay.
And it's sort of an art gallery for people who can't get shows in other art galleries. We love science fiction and monsters and gore and horror, and it's also very tongue-in-cheek, so we have a 10-foot-tall Bigfoot, an alien autopsy set you can be part of. So we're sort of celebrating science fiction and pop culture, and
I'm glad she's got that on.
Oh yeah, Katy Perry dropped by there.
Yeah.
So lots of alien. It's just we just celebrate all. We just treat it all as good fun. So there's a lot of fake gore. And, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not. It's like,
yeah, it's peculiar. It's kind of like a freak show, but it's kind of tongue in cheek with the humor.
I was going to say it feels safer.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's very. It's sort of if you came through, you'd get one thing, but then if you went through slower and read everything, you'd be like, oh, this is really just. I mean, it's an art gallery where we're treating it like it's
like a museum.
Right, and it's not.
Okay.
I mean, it feels like.
Well, thanks for clearing that up because you had me on edge a little bit.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, that was good.
Sure.
And another thing we talked before we started today, and I had it kind of backwards. I thought that you were primarily a screenwriter. Talk about how you evolved, because you were.
Right.
And how did you evolve from that? Now you're doing.
Well, I was never professionally a screenwriter.
Okay.
I've always been a screenwriter. I was an animator. I started out doing animation, and I started animating at Wellins Studios professionally. And did work there for years, and I became a director. And so I directed there for about 18 years.
Oh my goodness.
Directing commercials, music videos, whatever, pilots. I did an episode of the PJs and M&Ms and stuff like that. All the time being a writer. So that was how I paid my bills. I published a book called Storytelling in Animation at the height of my animating career through Cengage Publishing. I don't think they did a very good job editing it, but I do stand by the things I talked about.
Right.
That was just a fully, technical, scholastic textbook.
Here's how you do this thing. Just, it occurred to me, back up from there, how did you get into that? What brought you as an animator?
Oh, well, I was always a filmmaker. I always loved story. This all goes back to storytelling. As I was a writer, photographer, an artist, and I always loved filmmaking because it was the culmination of all that stuff.
Okay.
My filmmaking started with an 8mm wind-up camera and fake blood.
Really?
Yes. That's what me and the neighborhood kids would do that.
How prescient.
Yeah. And once we started to record sound, we're like, whoa, this is boring. We're going to have to actually think of the words.
Really? Okay.
So it was like, all right, so we started writing comedy. And so all through that, I was really enjoying filmmaking and writing.
Right.
Writing short stories. I really liked horror and short stories like that. And then when I got to college, everybody had jobs. Nobody could make films.
Oh.
And I didn't really think I had the patience for animation, but I was just burning to do something. So I was like, whoa, animation, I can do cut out paper animation on my own.
Really? Okay.
And get back to it.
So at this point wasn't CGI or whatever?
No, it's just I had a Super 8 camera on a photo stand with some lights, and I just did cut out paper animation. And so again, I was like, oh, this is great, because I was desperate to make films. But in high school, everybody was like, oh, we're out of school, we can play all weekend. But everyone had jobs, and they had to study, and just people were not available.
Right.
So I'm like, I'll start doing animation. And then that was sort of when the Mac had just come out and computers were just starting to do stuff, and there was some really primitive animation. The Amiga actually was
I remember
the main computer. And that's actually where I learned to 3D animate, was on the video toaster, believe it or not.
The video toaster?
Which became Lightwave, which then became a very serious software package that I knew when I got to Wellins Studios. And I had done a pilot for Hanna-Barbera for Strange Things back in like '95.
Okay.
I had pitched a CGI animated cartoon, which we did. So that was on my reel, so that made it much easier for me to get a job. So I went straight into animation from that. So I sort of backed into animation. A lot of people I work with are just complete animation fanatics. You know, it's like they'll see every animated show, every animated film. It's like, I'm not like that. If it's a good story, yeah, I'll see it, but I just don't uniformly say all animation is great. It's just another way to tell a story.
When I anticipated having you on the show, I was thinking about Lilo and Stitch.
Yes.
Because I think I'm right that was, even though it's fairly modern, was hand-drawn.
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah.
My brother actually is a director at Disney. He worked on that.
Oh my gosh.
He was a young guy.
And I think that there's an appeal to that, and maybe it's my age, but I just thought it was charming.
Yeah, and they tried to do another one, and it tanked terribly, and I think that was too bad. The Frog Princess, or they tried to go back to 2D, and it just didn't do well.
Oh, really? Okay.
And John Lasseter was really disappointed that the 2D didn't work.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see CG forever for
Yeah.
those guys.
Well, and I think we're a little bit off topic here, but we're to the point that if there were John Wayne, pick somebody who's not with us any longer,
Right.
they can recreate him and he can be in the scene.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty
Is
wild.
that scary?
Yeah.
I mean, it is to me.
In Blade Runner, in the new Blade Runner, they recreate
Harrison Ford?
No, Sean Young, who was the woman. They do
Oh,
have
sure.
a CGI version of her that looks amazing.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing. So
I think, to me, it's a little scary because the saying, can you believe your eyes or something?
Right.
Well, maybe you can't.
no, you can't.
Not
When it comes
now.
to films now, you can't.
Yeah.
No,
It's just so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
You know, I was thinking too, and I really so appreciate this, and we talked a little bit before we started here. You're a writer. I mean, you write, and I've said this 100 times, but my teacher once said, the problem is everybody wants to have written. They don't want to write. You want to write.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you do some of this stuff, and again, I had a little bit of a skewed view of your trajectory, but when you write, is it influenced by or formed by or directed by looking beyond the writing to the animation?
No.
So you just write the story?
Yeah, I just write the story. You know, it usually starts with whatever the story was. I don't write for animation. I have written some stuff for animation. I wrote a lot of animation, obviously, when I was directing, because a lot of times, depending on the campaign, they would come to you with a absolutely finished script. It's like, do this. We got an animatic. We want you to just copy this. Great. And other times, like, we got a cocktail napkin with this little dude, and we got nothing.
It's
and
a kind of an idea.
Right, and they're like, you're the animation people, tell us what to do. So, you know, very compartmentalized writing, you're usually just writing a few words, but there was a lot of that, and it's very, very picky. But it was still writing, you know, and I still
So the client, this would be like a personality thing, I guess.
Sure.
I would think that there are clients who are focused on their product,
Right.
and they don't know, you know,
Right.
you're the expert, so we want to sell this thing, so help us do that. Somebody else would be so possessive that, you know, my words are golden, and they're telling you what to do and how to do it.
Right.
And I suppose you just ran into both.
Absolutely. Well, there's a really almost twisted dynamic that happens, and I'll go off on animation, but there's like the agency, so whoever, Honda hires this big agency to make their commercial.
Okay.
So the agency has a vested interest to try to do what Honda wants.
Right.
But Honda has an idea of what they want too, because they've done a lot of commercials. So sometimes they have a great relationship, sometimes they have a terrible relationship. So I've worked on spots where they had one idea, and then the client said, we hate it. And then they're like, we've got nothing. Can you help us? And you're like, yeah, sure, we can do it. We do animation all the time.
Right.
Other times it's like, they like this, da-da-da-da-da. It's a very weird, because then I'm the third party here who's trying to mediate between them. And it's very, very stressful. I wouldn't recommend it.
I can imagine.
I mean,
well, I would think a poor relationship with so the agency, it seems to me, is the one, employment-wise, is the one in jeopardy.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I can imagine Honda would just say, pull the plug.
And I've seen it happen.
We'll just get somebody else.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. I've seen them be where the agency pushed an idea really hard, and the client never really liked it.
Right.
And they said, no, wait till we animate it. And then they animate it, and they're like, we like
still
it
don't
even
like it.
less.
Right.
And then they're like, can you help us? We're like, start writing those checks.
Sure.
Sure, we'll help you. We'll be here all night. Yeah.
Well, talk about, what I take is your transition from screenwriting,
Right.
you know, because you're a storyteller, and
Right.
and that's, I think, how you visualized a story.
Right.
And then talk about why you kind of stopped doing that and transitioned to
Sure.
book.
Well, the thing, and one thing I just want to say about a lot of people, where you said their words are precious and gold, and once I got a job, I was under no illusions. It's like they're paying me,
Right.
you know. And even though it's artistic, and people feel like, oh, you know, I brought something special to it. It's like it doesn't matter. It's like if you don't like how much they're paying you, go get another job.
Right.
And I was really surprised when I started working professionally how many people were so possessive of their work. It's like, you are getting paid, right? This is your
Right.
job. And I saw more people, you know, brought to tears because their shots were getting changed and stuff. And that was sort of the, I don't know, the worst of the emotional thing that could come from people being too invested in their job. But for me, it's like, I checked it at the door. If I got some creative input,
Right.
fantastic. If they're like, we don't know what to
If
do
they
here.
ask,
and they're like,
yeah.
please, and you're like, oh, you saved the day, fantastic. If they're like, no, and we actually changed these things that you liked and we made them less, that's fine too. I would
Okay.
say my piece, like,
Right.
well, okay. Because I had all these things that no one can touch. So it's
Well,
like,
and I was waiting for that,
You
yeah.
can beat me up here, but I'm going to go home.
Yeah,
and
but this
you
is
are not-
mine.
You're not going to you can't say a word about this. In fact,
Right.
you don't even know this exists.
Right.
And to me, that was like, yeah, I'll sit here and take all the crap, but I have my own stuff. And this goes beyond writing. It's like my whole life. Outside of it, it's like, I'll leave it behind.
You know, that's security, isn't it?
Yeah, of
You're a
course.
secure person.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy with what I do, so
Yeah.
it's you know, it's easy to do that. And if you're competing with someone who's happy and you're not happy, they're going to win.
Oh,
I
sure.
know it's not a matter of winning, but you know, they're going to succeed.
They're going to get their way.
Right,
or-
right.
Yeah. I think about a couple of things. And I don't know that this is true, just somebody told me that a playwright, man, their words are sacrosanct. But a screenwriter, maybe not so much. And I'm thinking about Woody Allen. And I've heard Owen Wilson, for one, but other people say, if you don't bring something to your character, it's tough. Because when you ask, what do you want me to do? His answer was, you know what to do.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You know,
Yeah.
what if I said this instead? Okay.
Yeah,
You know?
I've heard things like that. Yeah, which is crazy.
Where,
which is great.
and I don't know, maybe Neil Simon or somebody would say, hey, that's not how I wrote it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, I guess it's up to each guy. And Neil Simon, just to mention him, I just freaking love.
Yeah,
Neil
is that
Simon
so?
was just so great. I think if there was ever a guy who I didn't even realize I was trying to emulate when I was writing, was
Right.
the humor of Neil Simon's movies
Yeah.
were so clever. He was
I
so great.
believe I'm right that he wrote a book called Rewrite, and he said writing is rewriting. And, you know, so you get the idea, you put it down, let it steep, and then you come back and you know, that doesn't really work. And then, but I love that you, as a writer, that you get the opportunity to fix it, to change it.
Yeah.
And my example is always in basketball or a live stage performance or something. When you do it, that's it.
Yep.
You know, and you don't get a do-over. When you're writing, I think about a mystery, but it could be any of these. You get to the end of the book and you go, you know what would have been neat? If Susie would have picked up that paper off the desk and then, because I could bring it back, okay, so then you go back to the beginning and put it in.
Right. I don't
Yeah.
see how anybody ever wrote without a word processor, speaking of that, because that's how I write. And I have some writer friends. A friend of mine is actually a published writer, writes these fantasy books. He has his whole book figured out. He writes an outline.
Right.
If that was the case for me, then it's like, well, now I figured it out. I don't want to write the book anymore because now I know the story.
I'm with you.
I start with, okay, here's this cool premise that I like. Ooh, wouldn't that be interesting? And then I'll go, who's my main guy? And then I'll start to write on, like, here's a fun scene.
Right.
And then it'll start to germ out, and then I'll have these things germ out. And then the hardest part is connecting them together
Yeah.
at the end. But like you said, I work over time. You know, so it's like, all right, leave it alone. I'm
Yeah.
going to look at it, go back and go, okay, I know. And just let it percolate. It's great.
It sounds to me like maybe everybody who's a writer enjoys writing, but it seems like what you're almost talking about is daydreaming. It's like you get lost in the scene.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a dream, and this dream spins out, and you're there to capture it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's a distraction for all the horribleness in the world that you just sit there and go. Oh, wouldn't
You
it
make
be
your own world.
funny? Yeah, wouldn't it be funny? And it's just you're standing in line at the grocery store. And it's like, oh, that'd be a good scene. And I would assume that I don't know other writers' processes, but I have a lot of things going, and then some things die. Not usually though, because I usually don't start stuff that I don't finish. But a couple things like that thing sort of died.
Yeah.
But for me, the longer it seems viable, and I think a lot of writers also go, "Oh, I was working on this thing, but it's been years. I'm just going to quit." It's like, read it. Is it still good?
Right.
That test of time is actually an excellent. For me, that's like, wow, this is still.
If it's still good.
It's still good.
Yeah,
if I
right.
read something like, that's a funny joke, and it's been 5 years. It's like, this is worth doing it. And you're like, oh, what was I thinking? That's terrible. And delete it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the test of time is great. So and I think that someone would say, oh, I've been working on, how's that book going? I haven't worked on it in like a year. I'm just going to give it up. It's like, why? Don't give it up.
Right.
Just go back to it whenever you want.
You were talking earlier about a book being a tangible thing in the real world as opposed to digital.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this writing, that it didn't go away. It's still there.
No, I mean, Amazon opened a bookstore. So here's the online book, guys, and it's all going to be Kindle.
Right.
No, they opened a store where people are buying real books.
Yeah.
So that really says something. And like I said, you know, it's like you can set them down. They don't take batteries. I know the Kindles are all great and everything, but it's a computer. They fail. You have to go out of your way to destroy a book. They can get wet. They can get soggy. You know, you see like in World War II, you know, this old thing that somebody can still read it, you know.
I have thought about, you know, I'll make up a number. If a book is $15.99 and you got a book, go to Hallmark and pick out a card.
$4, $5.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, in terms of content and substance, a book is a bargain. I mean, you know, you can get a couple of greeting cards or a book, and the book is with you a lot longer.
Right. Well, it's also
and you don't wear it out by reading it.
No, and you can lend it and get it back. And it's also sort of become like, we also do a line of comic books, and it's sort of driven by another artist, Colin Batty, who's an amazing artist, and I draw some strips for him too. But they've sort of come full circle that now it's like, ooh, comic books. Like, ooh, it's kind of like, it's like now, it's like the graphic novel thing is crossed over. It's like, now this is not just this quarter thing that's at the corner drugstore.
Right.
It's now art. It's moving into this subculture of, wow, these things are not just these. There's some thought going into this. So doing that too is great, because people are very, you know, particular about collecting comics and and so that's great. I'm happy
viewing them differently.
Right, yeah, it's definitely treated differently. They're not like the little kiddie, because little kids don't read comics anymore.
Sure.
It's mostly adults, I think.
That's interesting. Yeah. And you know Phil Guzzo.
Yes, of course, he's a great guy.
And he's working on one. And are you collaborating, or you just know each other?
You know, we collaborated on a couple of things. We just, you know, don't live in the same town, but no, I've known Phil forever. Yeah, we've done films together.
Worked at the same place,
yes,
if I remember right.
He was a flame operator when I was a director. He helped me with the Powerpuff Girls video.
Really?
Yes, he posted that.
Holy smokes.
Yes. About 15 years ago.
Yeah. I have a couple little granddaughters, and so I know all about that.
Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah.
Well, tell me about your books.
Sure.
And it looks like, and I'm just going by the cover here, but it looks like they're really, there's a spectrum of topics and intensity and maybe audience and so on.
Sure. Well, you know, it's the same thing. It was whatever I wanted. I didn't really go by any genre or like, oh, I should be doing this. It's like,
you're not trying to please anybody.
No. It's just like, and I mean, I do want to please myself and people that I respect, that I would give the book to read. It's like, you know, I hope you enjoy this. Like I said, I started out with a screenplay of Mountain of the Dead, and this is actually a pretty creepy story. It happened in 1959 in the Ural Mountains in Russia, and 9 people died. No one has ever been charged with any crime. It is an absolutely creepy story. I started researching it. I even went to the lengths of, I downloaded some Russian documents and hired a woman from PSU to translate these documents for me. And so I wrote a fictional telling of it, and it's a really creepy story. And put it on Amazon, and it did really well. I mean, I still sell. You know, it's like, you know, maybe 5,000-6,000 now. It's been out for a few years. Which, had I written a screenplay, no one would have ever read it. No one. And so I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. You know, I'm getting, you know, getting a couple of bucks here and there. And it's like, I'm not going to get rich, but it's certainly validating.
Well, we talked about being validating. That's a better word. But satisfying.
And then it gets some great reviews. Other people like, oh, you obviously, you know, bad reviews. And it's like, it's fine. It's like, well, you read it. So that was like a epiphany moment. I was like, wow, this is great. The self-publishing thing became so viable to me. It's like, this book, Stella's Babysitting Service, I wanted to write kids' book. I'd read the Spiderwick things, and I was like, you know, I just wasn't that impressed with them. I thought it was a lot of imagery, but it wasn't very funny. I was like, well, I'll do one. And so I did this, which is kind of this X-Files for kids.
Oh, nice.
And this is the first one, and it's basically this girl, Stella, and she goes on these paranormal investigations, and she always has to take the little kid, who he always gets caught, and she has to save him. And I knew a producer said, you should pitch this at Nickelodeon as a show. And I said, wow, that'd be great. So we actually flew down to LA, and I met with an executive at Nickelodeon, and he goes, and of course, he was really impressed it was a book. So right there, I was like, bing, okay, so wow, you went to a lot of effort to make a book. That's really great. This really rises to the top. But he immediately, and I was like, this is great. You know, it's like, cool, I'd be great if this was a show. And he immediately started to pick on the things I would never change. He's like, well, she can't really be the lead. So he's like, girls can't be the lead. And
when was this?
This is Coraline had just come out. I'm like, really? Because Coraline just came out. I was thinking this. He goes, girls can't be, but maybe she's in charge and she sends out all the boys to do, you know, the adventuring. And so I was being very polite, and I thought, no, I can do whatever. I'm like, actually, I can't do whatever. This is not going to happen. I am not going to do this.
I wonder, you don't feel that that was a test to see how firm you are?
No.
He was serious.
No, he liked it. No, he was like, wow, this is great. Boy, we could do this. Of course, she can't be the lead because girls aren't the lead. But what if he was spitballing? And I was being very polite. I'm not going to storm out or whatever. And I was like, and I was like, no way. That's not going to happen. So it turned out I was very possessive. So I'm like, well, that's it. Forget it. I'm not going to do it anymore. But it didn't stop me. I kept writing. So I wrote a second one, which I like a lot better. It's a lot funnier. It's a lot beefier. And I might write another one because those are sort of, what do they call them, mid-chapter for kids. You know, like 12 to...
I was going to say, what age group?
13 to 8. And I have lots of friends who have kids who've read it to their kids. So it's just scary enough for like an 8-year-old and 13 like it or whatever. So I was like, it's great. And I might write another one. I started one. I haven't finished it. And then I've just been fascinated with World War II forever. And so just popped in my head, it's like, ooh, wouldn't it be neat? So I came up with this one. Which, again, it's a World War II story. A submarine up in the North Atlantic runs aground. A German submarine in a storm is blown onto this horrible little island up just blistering cold. Unaware that on the other side of the island is a team of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers building a radio transmitter, and they're going to get picked up. So there's no one there they don't have a boat, and these guys start a range war with each other, knowing that they run into each other, that the enemy's on the island. But there's also a third enemy on the island, something that's been on the island for a long time.
That's the horror part.
Yes, that's the horror part. So they're thinking, whoa, what is this? What are these? They keep thinking the other guy is really horrible because they keep finding all these horrible murders. So like, we had to quit, and then they find somebody who's been completely torn apart. Like, we can't quit, not knowing that they're actually dealing with a third creature. And I had a lot of fun writing it. I just love World War II. It's a great backdrop for any story. And I was like, oh, it's just so cold, and I just had such a good time writing the cold. Just like, how much can I just grind these guys? And I really hate it as a horror buff, when somebody does something wrong. So any horror fans, like, you stab the killer one time and then you drop the knife and run away. You don't do that. The best stories are when everybody does everything right and it still goes wrong. So I was very, very particular that nobody did unless it was part of it, did anything stupid. So it's like they followed the military rules. They followed common sense. They tried to defend themselves, and things just get worse and worse and worse and worse.
Because it makes it more believable.
Yeah, it's like, come on, the old drop the knife and whatever. It's like, call the cops, just all these logical things. And it's not that hard to write it the right way and then still have it go south. So that's always been something very important to me, is to try to have it be true and have it be smart so that people aren't just being idiots. Because that'll end a film for me if I'm watching a film or reading a book, when somebody's just like, I'm out, this is just ridiculous, And it can be something you're really into, and all of a sudden it just takes one dumb thing, and you're like, that did not make any sense. And then I did this one. So there was a second World War II. This one isn't paranormal. It does have it's pretty graphic. And I have one more World War II that I'm working on. It's going to be completely different, a comedy. So this one is a group of World War II Americans. They are forward locators for artillery. They get separated, they get captured and separated, and they escape, and they wind up in a village that has been taken over, that had been bombed years ago, has been taken over by these feral children. And they've gone into this trap. The whole village has been rigged as a game that you cannot get out of. And so these guys are now stuck in this little medieval walled village with these feral children who have thought everything in advance and are picking them off one by one.
Wow, that's a
and
premise.
that's based on a true story, a very loose true story.
Yeah.
An old friend of mine, when I was in college, I used to hang out with this art guy, and he had this older guy named Randall who had been in World War II. He's long since passed away, and he was going through with this squad of men in World War II, going through a little destroyed French village, and they found a mental institution for shell-shocked kids from the war, and it had been abandoned. And
oh my gosh!
They walked up and they're like, "Ooh, what should we do?" And there was a kid at the fence who started growling at them, and they're like, "We gotta go." And they moved on, and I was just like, "Whoa!" And he told me the story. I was like, "Wow!" And it was always stuck for me. He told me that story in like 1985.
Obviously, hasn't left you.
No, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna turn that into a story."
Right. When you first started that, I was thinking South Pacific, or the region, but you're saying France.
Yeah.
Is yours set in France as well?
It's kind of vague. It's on the border of France, Belgium, Germany. They don't know. They're lost. They don't know where they are. Somewhere probably France, Belgium.
Not
area.
tropical.
Yeah, not tropical.
Yeah. And I guess I was thinking about, how do the kids survive?
Right.
It seems like if it was warm, it'd be easier, but
It is warm. You know, and they've got it all set up. You know, they run this village.
Yeah.
And they go out and they pillage and get what they need, and it's like there's some that are almost adults too. It's
sort of Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. Yes.
Ish,
Yes.
yeah.
Definitely Lord of the Flies. Yeah, and it's pretty graphic.
Mike, what are you working on now?
Well, I work a lot in my shop, and I'm working on another World War II, completely different
And you said a comedy.
crazy comedy.
I could use the break.
Yeah, crazy comedy.
Yeah.
And then I have another story that I'm working on a lot of stories simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then I'm also working on some stories from when I was growing up that I will then incorporate into comics.
Okay.
So
So not a memoir, but you're just using that as a
Yeah,
basis.
just like some nice events from when I was that make a nice comic strip.
Yeah.
So.
Was it Shel Silverstein?
Sure, Shell. Yeah, the sidewalk ends guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Sure.
That's what I thought of.
Oh yeah, he's great.
I had the opportunity, the privilege to talk with Ray Bradbury
Oh, lucky
one
you.
day. Yeah,
Oh,
it was
my God.
quite a deal, and he works used to work on more than one thing at a time. And so he said he'd do one thing in the morning, and then have lunch, and then start and it could be 2 books, or it could be whatever, a movie or a TV or something.
Right. Yeah, I just hit a block, or I'll hit something, or I'll just get bored with it. And it's like, and then I'll just look at it and go, where am I? I'm like, you know what? Let me just go on something else for a while, or just change the flavor. But sometimes I want to write, and it's like I really don't have any ideas. So it's like, all right, just get in there, open the file, and just proof. Just change one thing.
Right.
Just go in there and just do a little thing. And then once you get in there, of course, you start doing stuff.
I like to, people talk about a blank page or blank screen or something. It's nice to have something, even if it's garbage, because then you've got something you can change.
Sure.
And like you said, I think it jump starts.
Well, I would never start at the beginning.
Oh, interesting.
No, God, no. That's just death.
Let me tell you, I had I'm in a writing group, and we met last night, and we have a new member, and she's really trying to do a science fiction thing. And this is now the 3rd or 4th attempt at the beginning. And it was kind of like Michener in a way. It's like first the earth cooled, and then the dinosaurs. I mean, it's just like this whole long buildup.
Right.
And finally, one of the people last night said, what you're trying to do is get these guys on a bus and get them down wherever they're, Portland or something. That's what you need to do. So another member said she was in a different group, same problem, and that is this slow start, trying to all the backstory and everything. And somebody came up with saying it's a vampire story, and the vampires are in an apartment underneath the blood bank. And so the beginning is 2 vampires run a room, rent an apartment. That's where you start. Let's go.
Right, sure. I mean, and there is a little bit of logic to that. It's like, if it's so complicated to explain that you can't explain it, you need to figure out what is at the heart of it.
Right.
You know, there's only, what is it? There's only three things: man against man, man against nature, man against himself.
Yeah.
Period.
That's it.
That's it. So which one is it?
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated with you know, the good guy wins or the bad guy wins. Those are two endings, or there's a draw.
Right.
So it's like
sort of Cormac McCarthy.
Right. So what's it gonna be? And,
Yeah.
and it's you know, it depends on where you get at the end. You know, if you want to make it a kick in the teeth or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who wins? We're out of time.
Oh my God, that was so fast.
Well,
thank you so much.
This is so fun. I love.
Thank you.
No more trepidation. I love having you.
Please come see it. I should have brought some tickets. You should see it.
Okay.
I think you'd get a lot of laughs out of it. Yes.
Well, I got something out of the website. In fact, Carolyn, do we have that? Caroline? It's say the name.
The Peculiarium.
.com.
Yes. .com.
Yeah, so
yes.
if people want to look at
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's open. It's closed Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in winter, and it'll be open 7 days a week once it gets nice.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
That's it. What a fun half hour.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I always say visit my website, stephenwlong.com, and I want to emphasize that because we're working on it. It's just really shaping up. My new book is out, and you can see that on there, and send me a question if you'd like to do that. So we'll see you next time on The Writing Life. Bye-bye.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know. You guys want to do one just with yourself without me doing the
think we're done. If they got enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably. Okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just bite too.